welcome again. This is the first of a new season of the Careers, Life, and Yale programming. We once again have 4 channels. They're a little bit different this year. Last year there was a STEM channel and the non-STEM channel, which was the human experience. They've been rolled into one this year and been given the title the Omnibus. So get on board the Omnibus. We have Careers, Life, and Yale, which in fact tonight is the first offering for Careers, Life, and Yale with Charles Eisenstein. Then we have Careers, the Careers channel. Last year it was more oriented towards career pivots, which of course we may do now, but some alumni may not be pivoting. They may be going the long haul in the career, same as it ever was. So we're expanding the perspective on that. And last but certainly not least, we are introducing one with students. The idea being that there's a lot going on at campus these days, and you as alumni are certainly interested in what current students are doing, and it allows you to engage in a dialogue with students. So we're all excited about the coming year and the possibility. And in fact, as I said, tonight we are kicking it off with author, speaker, Charles Eisenstein. I met Charles when he was a featured speaker for a virtual symposium for which I happen to be a panelist on the subject of all things of art and post-humanism. And I was intrigued when I learned that Charles was a Yale College grad, especially when I learned more about his atypical career path, along with an enthusiastic following as a result of his books and articles, public speaking, and podcasts. Now, while not granting himself a privileged position outside of this current social and cultural framework, he offers a perspective that takes the intractable and turns it into something more hopeful. And I might add that this may not be without ruffling a few feathers. Last January, we had Charles as a guest, and given the response that he prompted, we decided that we would invite him back for another go-round, this time with the Life and Personal Growth channel. So with that, I would like to hand it off to Charles Eisenstein.
Yeah, well, thank you, Stephanie. Thanks for having me back. And it's really good to be back with you all. I think I recognize some people from last time. Yeah, so I was joking to Stephanie before. Oh, and apologies for the time I was supposed to be here and this like family drama came up and I totally forgot it. Anyway, so I'm here now. And I was joking to Stephanie beforehand. I was like, well, of course, we're going to start this session with a rousing chorus of Boola Boola, you know, the Yale song, Boola Boola, Boola Boola, right? And I was thinking about like, and, you know, Stephanie was like, of course not, you know, and I was thinking about that actually, this, of course not. And thinking about the more innocent times in which people were unselfconsciously invested in the whole story of, well, for one thing, of Yale and school spirit, you know, and the alma mater and all that stuff, without this layer of cynicism or meta awareness. It was kind of, there was an innocence there. And I was thinking about that and like, and what happened to that? Because like, I mean, how many of you are just like, probably, I'm guessing, I don't know, maybe I'm an outlier, but I'm guessing that not a lot of you are, you know, singing the Yale songs all the time, and you know, it's just like, okay, so the at least what I'm perceiving as the decline in that spirit parallels a similar decline in our entire society, or even our civilization. But I'll maybe just limit it to our society. Decline in that wholehearted, uncomplicated belief in the story of our people, in the story of America, in the story of progress. And this, like, the same cynicism has proliferated to all quarters of our society, where we no longer so much believe in the mythology that had carried us. Now, all of us here are graduates of Yale University in one form or another, which means that we all occupy a relatively privileged position in what I'm calling the old story, the story of progress, which narrated human history as an ascent toward greater and greater domination and control, a rising above nature, an ascension out of superstition and into reason, out of ritual and into technology, and things were going to get better and better. And the role of a proud Yale graduate would be to participate in this triumphant ascent. Well, the unraveling of that story that has happened over my lifetime visits many people in the form of a kind of a personal crisis of identity, where the story of the people, the collective story that infuses meaning into our collective lives, also has a personal version, which I just referenced. Like, yeah, I'm part of this glorious march forward. So the crisis in the larger story often mirrors a crisis in the personal story, which can take the form of a midlife crisis, or maybe the midlife crisis happens before you even reach midlife. It's a crisis of meaning and identity. And it brings up questions that are familiar to any young person. And now they are being resuscitated in the life initiation, the transition that visits many people with the collapse of the structures of their lives. And this could be, employment or relationship, marriage, health, or it could just be a more like a crisis of meaning, of sense making. The world doesn't make sense anymore, and therefore, what am I doing here? Who am I in this world? Now, as I said, we're all of us here were Yale graduates, so it's possible or even likely that our investment in that structure of meaning and identity was stronger than maybe most people in society, because we were the representatives of it. We were the experts. We were the leaders. We were groomed to be that. We had succeeded within the framework of that story, where success means that you are a recognized contributor to this grand plan. So that means that the breakdown, when it hits, can be all the more devastating. The taller you are, the harder you fall. So, okay, and so maybe I'm not speaking to everybody here. There maybe people in this group for whom like it's really working. There's no question. Maybe there's been a few hiccups in the ascent of humanity, but things, you know, we're getting back on track. But I think that events over the past, let's say 15 years, starting with the financial crisis of 2007, 2008, and then continuing with the Trump administration, and now the reverberations of the pandemic. It's getting harder and harder to hold on to that narrative that things are getting better and better and we are on the right track as a civilization. And so it casts into question many of our individual roles. So I want to, in a few minutes, I'm gonna kind of put the question to you guys and see like, how much does this resonate? You know, are there people here who have already gone through this, we'll call it an initiatory ordeal of the breakdown of sense and meaning and identity in your life, where you were thrust into what I call the space between stories, where you no longer are really so sure who you are anymore, how to live life, what's important, even what's real. Things that had seemed so real and reliable and unquestionable become, they come into question. So maybe some of you have been through that and come through it into a new understanding, a new story that once again infuses life with meaning and purpose and direction. And maybe some of you are in that place right now, where the old reliable systems and narratives are not working anymore, and you don't know who you are, and you don't know what's coming, and you're like, wow, I'm releasing into uncertainty at this time, and maybe becoming comfortable with it, or maybe not yet, maybe still holding on, maybe going back and forth. And then maybe there's some of you who kind of see it coming, are feeling a loss of confidence and buy-in to a life that had maybe 5 years ago been fulfilling and exciting.
Hey, Charles, can I interject for a moment?
Sure. I was going to list one more possibility, though. Can I just do that?
Sure.
And then there are probably people here who, like the story that you are in is working really well. You are thriving. You are expanding within it, and what I'm saying is totally, you know, at best, an interesting idea, but not personally relevant. So yes, please.
Yeah, and real quick, because I know these sessions always go great, very interactive, looking input from the crowd, et cetera. So I just want to ask, because I think in the last session, you actually shared some of your own experiences in these dimensions and kind of helped frame what you were saying, taken from the abstract to the real. So if you're comfortable, you want to share anything that in your own case gives other people ways to think about their situations, might be helpful.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Just trying to.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of a. I mean, I've done in the last. I can't remember what I said last time, but in the last year and a half, you know, I'm something of a countercultural intellectual, and I've been pretty comfortable on the margins and not attracting that much criticism for the heterodox views that I espouse. And then in the last year, that's really changed. And as like, you know, for example, as things that were once not political, once were not polarizing, have become very political and very polarized. So what I used to be able to get away with as a public sort of public intellectual, and kind of hide behind, well, okay, we're just discussing ideas here. It became very controversial, and I got, you know, canceled from things and you know, censored in various ways, and it really brought home to me, like, oh my God, like, this is for real. And I'm not sure if this is a good example of a breakdown in a story, but it was certainly a dissolving of some of my mental, like my psychological structures of safety, where I was comfortable with being irrelevant, you know, and now all of a sudden, you know, people on the one hand are saying, thank you for giving voice to what I've not dared to say, and I thought I was crazy, you know, and other people are saying, you know, Charles, your views are, you know, killing people. Like, wow, I hadn't, like my ideas, you know, it's like imagine like you're a philosopher. Imagine you're, I mean, not to compare myself with, you know, any of the great philosophers, but like, you know, imagine that you're, you know, Immanuel Kant or something, you know, and you're writing your things and you're having your debates with other philosophers, and like all of a sudden then it matters. So that really, it threw me into something of a space between stories, like even like, wow, do I even want to continue to profess and opine things that people take now so seriously and have potentially such big impact? So I went through a lot of soul searching there and deep questioning of, okay, why do I believe what I believe? How do I distinguish what I know from direct experience with what I merely believe because it's convenient to believe it, because it fits into other things I believe, because it's part of a self-image, because it's consistent with a paradigm that I uphold, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if this is too abstract for you guys, or if this is helpful to illustrate the point. I'm seeing a lot of people, I'll give maybe another example, not directly personal, but my wife is a healer. She practices something called integrative manual therapy. It's like light touch. It uses medical, physiological, and anatomical concepts, but it's like nothing close to what you would learn in medical school, you know. And people come to her who have serious, usually chronic health conditions that have been incurable. You know, they've gone to doctor after doctor and so forth. And just the other day, a woman came to her who had knee pain, intense knee pain for 10 years. And, you know, no one could help her. And they you know, give her painkillers and so forth, and Stella fixed it in 15 minutes. And so these people this is an example of what I'm talking about. The old story being, thanks to the wonderful progress of modern medicine, if you get sick, the doctors can better and better fix you. If I get sick, if I'm hurt, if something's wrong with me, I go to the doctor and I'm fixed. That's kind of the, you know, there are these heroes in these white coats, you know, these priests. And then the breakdown of that story is you go to them and, you know, they tell you they can't fix you. They tell you nothing's wrong with you. The tests don't show anything. Maybe they prescribe an antidepressant, you know, it's all in your head. And like that belief, that trust in the story falls apart. And that is the space between stories, which is such a pregnant place, because that's the emptiness into which something new can come. And for my wife's patients, this something new could very well be oh, their friend told them about this alternative practitioner, and they go and then what seems to them to be a miracle happens. A miracle being, in my view, something that's impossible from an old story, but possible within a new one. So that's one example of the process I'm talking about. Is this speaking to people? Like, is this something tangible enough that we could go off into breakout rooms in a minute?
Yeah, Charles, I think, I think it's, let us go off into the breakout rooms. Okay. We can discuss among ourselves and get back to you.
Well, I was just going to offer you a kind of a prompt, which is to share a story that either share a story about your own process of the breakdown of an old story, the space between stories, and maybe if you're living a new story, like, has that happened to you? It doesn't just happen once in a lifetime, usually. Has that happened to you? Or are you in the midst of that right now? Or is it smooth sailing and everything makes sense and you've got no questions about meaning and identity? What is it for you? So let's do that and spend maybe 15 to 20 minutes, you think?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. We had a very lively session. And I kind of want to repeat a little bit of what I said in that session to the rest of you, but maybe first I'd like to I don't know, maybe if there's 2 or 3 people who want to share something that was especially notable in your group, like that feels like it maybe has a little bit of universality or a little bit of poignancy or something that you want to share. Just go ahead and share.
We found ourselves asking the question of meaning and the question of how do you accommodate the rapid change and remain resilient and faithful to yourself, and how do you keep deciding what is your core and then be able to express it in the world or the circumstances that you find yourself in. And it was wonderful to have someone in our group with a span probably of age from their 20s to the 70s, where we had shared experiences at Yale, and I'm in my mid-80s. And we were able to find that we were asking similar questions and tossing similar values in the air together. It was wonderful to have that variation in the group.
I'll say a little stark to hear. I thought you'd be able to give us the answers by now.
Perhaps. Another breakout group. I do believe there are answers, but I think they come from new learning.
Charles, you may have to just call on somebody.
Okay. Let's see here.
I could share a little bit about our group. We spoke a little bit about retirement and the transitions that are involved with that, and giving up something that identified you for maybe many years, and just how there's a new adventure to be found and being open to new challenges. And there were just 3 of us in the group, but we kind of all had similar shared experiences. 3 women. We had an artist, a pianist, and a nurse. And very interesting experience. I don't know if anybody else in the group wants to share something, but it was delightful to meet them both.
I think I was in the same group as Elaine, and I think something that Charles said, which was, sometimes you get an emptiness into which something new could come. And, you know, we talked about leaping into the void, and yeah, whether we chose the change or whether we created the change by retiring or whatever, or facing the pandemic, which forced change, there were voids, there were empty spaces that give us time to reflect and journal and think of possibilities, and then take a risk and jump and see what happens.
I'm not on video because I'm in the middle of baking, and I guess that shows the perspective I came into the webinar with. I thought I would just listen in the background while doing something else. And I'm really moved that there were breakout groups, and we had commonalities in our groups, even physically where two of us are. And that just felt like something special. So anyway, I'm just moved to have heard from everyone.
Yeah, oh, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'd like to share. So in our group, there were two of us, so me and Nathaniel, and we were talking about how, you know, there's a lot of pressure when it comes to like getting into Yale, graduating from Yale, and living life. And I feel like since graduating, I graduated in 2012. You know, when I first had my first job, I was in the consulting world, and I experienced a lot of cognitive dissonance because you go from a place like Yale where intellectual curiosity is very much encouraged, and then you get to a job where I felt like my brain and soul were rotting. And I was like, why didn't anyone tell me that this is what the real world is about? And I felt so underprepared for like the mundaneness of like a 9-to-5 job, right? And so I feel like since graduating, like really my journey has been defining success on my own terms, and learning to like entangle myself from like prestige, right? But that's something that kind of follows you for better or for worse, because even now, like I still feel kind of queasy when like someone asks me where did you go to school, because oftentimes when I say Yale, the first response will be something like, oh, you must be so smart, or like, or if I don't understand something, then the response will be like, oh, where did you go to school again? And so that's also feel things like imposter syndrome, because now I feel like I have to prove myself to people who don't know me because they automatically assume that I'm smart and capable. And so I feel like the last couple of years has really been trying to figure out who I am without, you know, getting caught up in this Yale identity. And like the way that I've been reconciling that is like Yale is a part of me, but not all of me. And I wish that like people like non-Yalies know that too, or feel that too, because I feel like once it comes out that I went to Yale, then like people just see that and like nothing else. And yeah, I just have a lot to say, but that was part of the conversation. Yeah.
I can add maybe one further perspective, which is that I had the experience when I was at Yale, which was in the late 60s and early 70s. I think I had at least 3 major stories ruptured and put into question. The first was probably about the goodness and integrity of the government and the country in the context of issues of racism and Vietnam War, and learning more about the history. And, you know, related to that, I immersed myself quite a bit in studying traditions of socialism, communism, anarchism. And yet that story also got ruptured by just seeing all the issues and problems, a lot of which I saw while at Yale and the groups and people I was with. The lack of really treating other people well, and of course, reading the history, you get a lot. That was a second rupture, and then a third rupture was related to exploring the wilds and really opening more to mystical experiences, and that ruptured the more rational view of the world. So that was all set in motion within a few years at Yale. And the rest of my life has been working with that.
Wow, yeah, that's gets to the heart of what I was talking about. There's layer after layer after layer of the unraveling. Angela's share just now also brought up a bit of this, this idea of like, well, you went to Yale, therefore it's like kind of like you're supposed to be this almost superior sort of being, like smarter. And really what that means is a certain kind of intelligence that is celebrated by civilization as we know it. But it's certainly not the only way of being human. And maybe now it's not even the most useful way of being human. And that leads to something that came up in our group, which was white male supremacy. And the old Bula Bula song certainly has reverberations of that. So I want to say I wasn't invoking that out of nostalgia, and I wish things were like that now. And indeed, as I said in our little group, part of the breakdown of the story has been a breakdown of this ideal about America, land of the free, home of the brave, liberty and justice for all, and so forth, which when it finally came face to face with the truth of the history of slavery and Jim Crow and genocide of indigenous people and so forth, like that story began to disintegrate, leaving many people in a state of confusion and susceptibility to fascist stories or other replacements for what was once a unifying narrative. And so, Donald, what you were saying though about like this level of mysticism, I was in the group sharing that there's the overthrow of white male supremacy is not just to insert new faces into the old structures, the old social structures, the old institutions, or even the old structures of sense and meaning, because the Eurocentric worldview is also dissolving, partly because of what we might call mystical experiences, or the kind of thing that my wife does that just don't fit into the worldview that we have accepted as real. And that we meaning the Eurocentric cultures have imposed on the rest of the world as a kind of intellectual progress, and seen progress as being educated into the ways of knowing of the West. So this is like a further level of unraveling that I think is a lot more widespread than it appears. People harbor these experiences in secret. They don't often share about their, UFO encounter or their, ghost experience or their wild synchronicity, or because you don't want people to think you're crazy. But I think that the breakdown of reality is kind of infiltrating under the surface and weakening further our collective faith in the agreements that we've constructed. Yeah.
Charles, I have a question from what you just said. Because we have this need for meaning, and being without it is terribly depressing and confusing, and we want to hold on to something. I mean, you're talking about sort of the breakdown of Eurocentric ideas. Isn't there a danger at the same time? I mean, that one could, sort of valorize the other, in a way that's uncritical, unthinking, because one is like, oh, this didn't work, this thing didn't work, therefore I'm going to pay attention to, the other culture, and somehow or another, because this culture isn't my culture, it's the, it's the better one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that, yes, I do. And I think that that is actually still part of the same mindset. Part of it is the division of the world into the good thing and the bad thing. The pattern of finding, it's the pattern of progress through control. And that starts with identifying the perpetrator, the culprit, the evil thing that, oh, and so what you're describing is, oh, we thought we were the good guys and that this was good and that the indigenous were backward and, ignorant, but now it's the opposite. Well, still there is that same pattern of which one's the good one. So I think really where this wants to take us is to humility, where we say, we thought we had all the answers. And obviously we don't, because look at the world and look at our own lives. Even the lives of the 1%. If you want to find like the happiest human beings on earth, don't look in the Hamptons or Greenwich or Beverly Hills. You have to go to like, a remote village in Ecuador or something like that, or visit the Hadza in East Africa, or like you have to, like those are the kind of places where I've found people who remind me of how joyful a human being can be. So I think that this humility is not a wholesale rejection of the accomplishments and beauties of Western civilization, but it's simply a recognition of limits that are becoming dire today. Yeah.
So, looking at the time and being aware of keeping everybody to the hour. I mean, it sounds like this was just a good, you've got to a launching point where we could just go off for another hour. So maybe we'll invite you back again. But I want to thank you, Charles, for prompting this self-examination of ourselves as individuals, as part of a culture, and even allowing ourselves to see what that might mean specifically for us as Yalies. And I want to hand it over to Jeff now to take us home.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. And Charles, it was, again, a great way to kick off the new season. So thanks. And again, thanks to all the people who participated. It just means so much to us that we get all the alumni on board across schools, across years and so forth. And we're really looking forward to an exciting year. Next week, we're going to have that first student's point of view. We're still trying to fill it in, and the students are just getting back on campus. So bear with us if you see a slip, but for sure, these Thursday nights will gel. So I encourage you, just keep coming and participate, and you learn something, make some friends as well. Also, you've heard about cross campus many times, and that's still going very well. The additions to that platform just grow all the time. If Kate, Chelsea, that link, I don't know if we had it at the beginning, but maybe add it now. I encourage all the Yalies to get in there. You'll again find support. You can help people get help. There's so much going on across campus. It's been a real gem. So with that, I'll say thanks. And if you don't get the cross campus link, oh, there you go. Thank you, Kate. and have a great night. You know.
I promised to take it some, but I actually, because some of you may have just been introduced to Charles, and Charles has a great website, charleseisenstein.org, where there is a lot of free content. I mean, one of Charles's publications is Sacred Economics, which he talks about our culture of money and exchange. And Charles actually walks the walk. And so I encourage you to go to that site, learn more about Charles, and maybe invite him to come to a town near you. So with that, thank you, Charles.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
See you next week. Be well. Bye-bye.
Thank you.